takes some risks.
You got to risk.
Taking a big risk.
Want success? Model the best. So today, let's learn one of the most common rules that successful people follow: take risks.
A Fiat X19 that had a hole in the floorboard. I mean, you could tell I was living the high life, right? I mean, and I was putting in oil every 60 miles and, you know, working as a bartender at night. What did I have to lose? Right. You know, and so it wasn't like, oh man, you know, I could lose all this. And so, and so it was just like, you just go for it. Right. Now, later on, after I'd had some success and we got back and we started AudioNet, which turned into broadcast.com, the math was different. The equations, you know, the calculus was different. It was like, okay, I'm investing a lot of my saved money into this whole idea of netcasting, right? Or internet broadcasting in early 1995 when people didn't even know what the internet was. That was all risk because I literally was putting everything that I had on the line for something. People just laughed at me and said, wait, audio over the internet. You know you can turn on the radio. You know you can turn on the TV. Yeah, but you don't get it. No, that's just dumb, all right? You know, and so being able to overcome all that resistance, because remember back then, A, you had to have a PC. B, you had to know what a modem was and install it. C, you had to know what the internet was, and then you had to download a TCP/IP client that worked over a modem and then connected to a browser that you probably didn't even know what it was or how to download it. And we had to take it on faith that all this was going to grow.
And this is what I tell my daughters every day. Do not be afraid to fail, because that oftentimes is the thing that keeps us as women and girls back, because we think we have to be right. We think we have to be perfect. We think that we can't stumble. And the only way you succeed in life, the only way you learn is by failing. It's not the failure, it's what you do after you fail. You know, do you let it eat you up? Do you quit? Do you give up? Or do you let it bolster you? Does it serve as the challenge in your mind to do more, to take some risks, to step outside of your comfort zone?
You cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure. To invent, you need to experiment. And if you know in advance that it's going to work, it is not an experiment. And so that's a very important thing. They are inseparable twins, failure and invention. And so you have to be willing to do that. And it's embarrassing to fail. It's always embarrassing to fail. But you have to say, no, that's not how this works. If I said to you, you have a 10% chance with a particular decision, a 10% chance of a 100x return, you should take that bet every time, but you're still going to be wrong 9 out of 10 times, and it's going to feel bad 9 out of 10 times. And with technology, the outcomes, the results can be very long-tailed. The payoff can be very asymmetric, which is why you should do so much experimentation. You know, everybody knows that if you swing for the fences, you hit more home runs, but you also strike out more. But with the baseball, that analogy doesn't go far enough, because with baseball, no matter how well you connect with the ball, you can only get 4 runs. The success is capped at 4 runs. But in business, every once in a while, you step up to the plate and you hit the ball so hard, you get 1,000 runs. And so when you have that kind of asymmetric payoff, and one at bat can get you 1,000 runs, it encourages you to experiment more. It's the right business decision to experiment more. It's also better for your customers. Customers like the successful experiments.
The question is my biggest burn. I've lost millions. Yeah, of course, because you can't win without playing, right? You got to risk. So when you're doing what I did back in the day, it was so early, you were investing in people's ideas. So so Tinder, right? Before Tinder, like 10 years earlier, in the gay male community, there was an app called Grindr. And I was like, this is really gonna happen for boys and girls, I know it. So I was chasing one Highlight. I was chasing all these apps that I thought could be the Tinder, right? There was one company that I swore was gonna be bigger than Facebook. It was called Yobongo. I should have known just on the name, but you know, I mean, I put 100, listen, you have to understand when I was losing this money, it was tough for me because my Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr stock hadn't made me money yet. So these, like that $50,000 check that went to zero, that shit hurt because I was bleeding for that 50, you know? But I've lost a lot. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not scared. You know why I'm not scared? Because I'm not scared to go backwards. Like, my favorite Rocky is Rocky 6 when he loses everything and goes back to the hood in Philly. Like, I'm not scared about like, you understand? I like the process. I'm not worried about the judgment. Like, back to the first question about the money, it's just not even in my mindset.
Also, if you want to learn how to have confidence like Michelle Obama, myself, Kerry Washington, and others, check out my free 254 series. The links are in the description below.
Doubts don't go away. You just learn how to deal with them.
If you're doing work that you love, you're more likely to follow through. You're more likely to do it because it doesn't feel like work, because you love doing it.
It's important for us to remember the joy in what we do. It's important to be effective in our workplace, but it's important to cultivate the moments that just bring us joy.
You will have many opportunities to reinvent yourself. And so you should go out and take the risk and try it. And I really love this message, and it's one that I haven't heard too often, so it's awesome to be able to bring it to the channel. It's so easy to get lost in your current situation. It's so easy to get lost in the present moment and to be stuck and only look at the trees instead of being able to take a step up and see the forest and see a much bigger picture. We get lost in our current environment, in our current world, and that prevents us from making smart decisions. That current world will change so many times. You will have many opportunities to reinvent yourself over the course of your life. My own story, when I was in university, I thought I wanted to be a banker. I thought I wanted to get a job. I was working towards getting a job. I want to be a banker. This is what I want to do. Everything was geared towards that. Life change, right? Sudden shift, meet these entrepreneurs, join this company, and now it's all about the software company and building it up and biotech, and I know nothing about science, I know nothing about software, and I'm young, and I doubt myself, and I have all these limiting beliefs. That was my world. I sold it, and then what? Now, I don't know what I want to do. I ended up becoming a venture capitalist, and I'm all in on being a venture capitalist. I'm learning and understanding how to raise capital. I'm not super interested in it once I've learned enough. So I want to help entrepreneurs. How am I going to do that? I don't know. I start by speaking. I go to the website. Now I'm all in on YouTube. YouTube won't be here forever, right? Like, YouTube might last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and then something else comes along, and that'll be the next shift. And so I think it's easy to get lost in the moment of what our current short-term view of the world is and our life is. But when you have the extra perspective to think of, you know what, like, I'm gonna have multiple careers over my life. Like, what happens right now is not as important as you think it is, right? It's not like you make one decision here today and that's your life for the rest of your life. Make the decision. If it doesn't work out, it's okay. You will adjust, you will change. Once YouTube dies down, like, this is my moment right now, I have to go all in on that before that window closes. But once YouTube shifts, it's okay. I will shift. I will find the next thing. I will adjust, right? I'll have that moment of uncertainty, and then I'll find my next thing and go hard on that. And so the lesson from this for me is, when you find that thing, you gotta do it. Because if your goal is to be a YouTuber, as an example, if YouTube's not as big in 5 years or 10 years and something else is all the rage, like, you missed your chance. You won't be a YouTuber forever. Things will change. So when you have that idea, when you have that spark, when you want to try to do something, instead of sitting on the sidelines and watching somebody else get rich off your idea and kicking yourself and saying, I should have done that. Like, I had it all lined up, right? I had the idea, I had the talent, I had the ability, I just didn't believe in myself, I didn't take enough action. Instead of just sitting on the sidelines and being that person, do something. And if it doesn't work out, it's okay, because you'll have multiple opportunities in the future to continue to reinvent yourself. This one idea is not your forever idea. So just give it a shot and see if it works out, instead of living the rest of your life wondering, what if?
What is the value of risk for an entrepreneur? Like, the ability to take risk?
It's everything. It's part of my DNA. You know, it's just like, I'm constantly every day trying to challenge myself, you know, to push myself to take risk, whether it's in my personal life, you know, pushing myself to new environments, trying new things,
and why do you do that?
Meeting new people. It helps me grow. You know, I grow as an individual. Every time I try to do something that scares me, I just afterwards, like it empowers me. I feel, I feel like I've learned something, I've grown, I've learned about a new culture, I've learned about a new person. I always feel like I can learn something new from someone, no matter who they are, so, and then with ideas, like I just love, I'm not afraid to fail. For me, there's nothing more powerful than creating something, and if it's going wrong, like solving, okay, let's pivot, let's figure out why it's not working, and continuing until, we actually have built something that people, see value in and has grown. And when something does work, the reward of like seeing people come together for one thing and everyone kind of believing in that mission and believing in that idea and believing in it, it's just like, there's nothing more rewarding. To me, that's like, it's best moments of my life have been like when I've taken a big risk and I've seen it come to fruition. And like, it's gone from this idea to people, to like people, all making it reality.
Making the transition into Hollywood, there was no blueprint before me, so it wasn't like I can say, oh, there's that other black Samoan wrestler who was like over 6'4" and weighed whatever pounds. There was a time where I was still trying to find my footing in Hollywood and still trying to understand how I fit into this machine. And I was enamored and motivated by the opportunity to play on a platform that I hadn't before. And coming from the world of wrestling, which was a very crazy, wild world of wrestling. So there was a time where I was a little concerned with how I fit in, and also if I was even going to fit in. But yeah, years later, I'm very fortunate to be sitting here now.
I was flying from the British Virgin Islands, from Puerto Rico to the British Virgin Islands, and I was 28 years old, and I'd been away from home for 3 weeks, and I had this gorgeous lady waiting for me, and American Airlines announced that they're not going to fly the flight till the next morning. They didn't have enough passengers. And I was damned if I was going to wait till the next morning. And so I went to the back of the airport and I borrowed a blackboard and I scribbled Virgin Airlines as a joke, $39 one way to the British Virgin Islands, and went around all the passengers and I managed to fill up my first flight. And when I got to the BVI, the guy on my left turned to me and said, sharpen up the service a bit and you could be in the airline business. And the next day, anyway, the night went well. The next day, she's now my wife 40 years, still 40 years later. The next day I rang up Boeing and I said, I'm thinking of going into the airline business. In fact, I've just had my test flight. Do you have any second-hand 747s for sale? And the person who took the phone call, I thought he was going to put the phone down on me, but he hung on in there. So he said, well, what does your company do? And I said, well, we're a record company. We've got the Rolling Stones, we've got the Sex Pistols. And again, he didn't sound very, very, and he said, what's the name of the company? And I said, Virgin. And there was a long pause, and he said, well, look, we'll send a salesman to see you, but with a name like Virgin, I just hope your airline goes the whole way.
There was a period before Scandal when I went into the wilderness. And for me, what that meant was there was a lot of toxicity in my life. People that I needed to let go of in a personal way, in a business way. And also I felt like I had been living my career kind of on autopilot. And I took a break and did a Broadway play. And I went back to my roots as an artist. And doing Broadway is not going to make you rich. I think it cost me money to do the play on Broadway. But it was my return to my artistic essence, kind of the conversation between audience and artist. And I worked with a director who really challenged me. And so going into the wilderness really meant stripping myself of a lot of unnecessary weight in my life. And And the ritual of doing theater is, I thought of it as going into a monastery, because you do the same thing 8 times a week in the same place, you say the same words with the same props, and so it is a ritual that you commit to. And I just wanted to, in a monk-like way, commit to that ritual and let it teach me about myself and let myself unfold. And in that period, I let go of a lot of people and a lot of things. I experienced a lot of loss professionally. I had, for example, companies that I was working with on an endorsement level that walked away from me because not everybody thinks Broadway's sexy. My personal life changed a great deal. I allowed myself to be open to change in my personal life. I don't talk about my personal life very often, but that's true. So I think going into the wilderness made me ready as an artist, as a person, as a businesswoman to receive scandal.
From the perspective of this generation, a new generation, millennials will see Queen possibly for the first time and get to know Freddie for the first time. So we wanted to be as intimate as we could with his life and showing an aspect of who this person was behind closed doors, how a young man from humble beginnings can come to be one of the greatest rock stars the world has ever known and be a part of one of the greatest rock bands the world has ever known. It's an opportunity of a lifetime, and yes, chances are it could go very, very wrong, but you know, you can't live life without taking a few risks, and I like a challenge, I guess. This is probably the biggest one I'll ever take in my life, and fingers crossed it works.
Now I've got a special bonus clip with Anthony Hopkins on how to be bold that I really think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the 3-point landing questions. Let's go from just watching the video to taking action. Here we go. Question number 1. What's a bold risk that you want to take? Number 2. What's the first small step that you can take to just get started? And number 3, how can you commit to taking that first step today?
Nixon must have been one of the most difficult roles you ever played.
That was a nightmare role to play, yes. I got a phone call in England many years ago, and my agent said that Oliver Stone wants to talk to you. And I said, Oliver Stone, what does he want me for? He said, for Nixon. I said, Nixon? I said, well, he's President Nixon. I said, oh, what part does he want? He said, President Nixon. I said, you crazy? I said, no, he must be mad. And he phoned me up and he said, well, he said, I hear you're a chicken, you don't want to do it. I said, well, I don't want to do you a disservice. He said, well, I'm coming into London anyway at the beginning of next week, so let's meet anyway, even though you don't want to do it. I said, okay. So I was on my way to the hotel to meet him, and I had that moment of clarity when in the middle of Hyde Park. And I thought, I can either work with this great American director, make a complete idiot of myself, or I can stay safe here in Britain, working for the BBC, go off to Hungary to make a Dostoevsky film or something so boring like that, and and stay happy for the rest of my life and die of a heart attack, and that'll be the end of it. But I thought, well, I'll just do something that's really challenging. So I met Oliver Stone for breakfast that very morning, half an hour later, and I said, I'll do it. He said, great. So there we were. And I believe that be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. And I believe that about everything, so I don't do anything that's conventional.
If you want to learn how to be more accountable, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Total accountability.
Take accountability.
Accountability is what actually leads to happiness.